Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the heart of fascinating subjects. Just the name Gabriel García Márquez, or Gabo as people called him, it instantly conjures a world, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A whole universe. Macondo, the Buendias.
Exactly. Impossible realities that somehow feel, well, more real than our own sometimes. How did one man even create all that, giving us stories that they redefine literature?
It's a world where, the ordinary is magical and the magic feels utterly normal. His work is so distinct, so immersive, it really blurs those lines between reality and imagination.
It really does. And today we're taking a deep dive into the incredible life of that very man. We're using a really rich biography to kind of peel back the layers of the myth.
Sounds great.
Our mission is to unpack those formative experiences, the surprising facts maybe, and the deep-seated influences that shaped him. We'll go from his unique childhood right up to his global fame. You'll discover the real-life threads woven right into his most famous stories.
Yeah, and like a lot of great storytellers, Gabo's fiction is so deeply rooted in his own history, even when it feels completely fantastical. Understanding his journey is kind of a shortcut to really appreciating his genius.
Exactly. So get ready for an engaging journey. We think it'll give you insights to revisit his books with fresh eyes, maybe uncover those aha moments you crave. You might even make sense of some of those more bewildering bits.
Where do we start? The beginning.
Let's start right there. Aracataca. That's where it all began for this literary giant. So our story kicks off in Aracataca, where a young Gabito was left with his maternal grandparents, Colonel Nicolas Marquez Mejia and Tranquilina Iguaran Cortés. Imagine that you're just a baby and your mother's sudden absence becomes this early, unspoken anxiety. It shapes your first memories.
And this is crucial because these two figures, the Colonel and Tranquilina, they really represent the two poles of the world that would define his writing later on. The Colonel, he was this powerful, really complex figure. A veteran of the Thousand-Day War, a brutal civil war in Colombia, a staunch liberal, a local treasurer too. But he also had this unique, almost poetic side job, crafting little goldfish.
Those little goldfish, they pop up so much.
They do, and the Colonel's past was, well, it was the stuff of legend. There's this incredible story about him killing a man in self-defense.
Right, I read about that. What was the deeper significance for Gabito?
Well, the town apparently just accepted it, so much so that the dead man's own brother guarded the Colonel's house afterwards. Can you imagine?
Wow.
But the lasting impact on Garcia Marquez was what his grandfather said. You don't know how much a dead man weighs? It was a phrase Gabito never forgot. The Colonel, you see, he was Gabito's umbilical cord to reality. Introduced him to the man's world of politics and history, pulling him out of what Gabo called a purely feminine world of superstition.
Okay, so the Colonel is this grounded, maybe violent reality. How did Tranquilina, his grandmother Mina, embody the other side, the mystical side? How did that shape him?
Mina. She was really the head of the household. Small, kind of nervous woman, but she had these fantastic forces, premonitions. She'd interpret dreams to organize their daily life.
That sounds like the start of magical realism right there.
Exactly. This is where it starts to come together.
Yeah.
The house itself was apparently full of mysteries, ghosts even. It led to terrifying nights for young Gabito. Her constant warnings about souls in torment, black butterflies. They directly inspired the magical realism later. Even things like the smell of guava from La Rosa, the clearing, or that legendary chestnut tree in 100 Years of Solitude. Those are real things from her world, just filtered through her mystical view.
You can almost feel that atmosphere she created. And this vivid, myth-filled world of his grandparents, it existed inside a town that was changing fast, right? The Aracataca wasn't always sleepy.
Not at all. Originally named for clear water by the Chimla Indians, but then banana cultivation arrived. And the Boston-based United Fruit Company, the UFC, showed up around 1905. It exploded into what Gabo himself called a Wild West boom town, drew in all sorts of immigrants.
And this boom led to something really tragic, didn't it? The Banana Massacre in 1928.
A pivotal event, absolutely devastating. Workers were striding for better conditions. The government's response? They sent 1,800 troops down from the highlands. Machine guns were set up in Cienaga, where thousands of strikers had gathered.
It's a scene Gabo immortalized. An officer reads out, "Decree no I," declares a state of siege. The crowd is defiant. Someone shouts back, "You can have the other minute on us."
And then just fire. That massacre, which is part of a much wider conflict where maybe, 100,000 Colombians are killed, it shattered the region, left a huge mark on Gabo.
Yeah.
Then the Great Depression hit. The UFC pulled back, and Aracataca went into decline. All this happened right during his childhood, during his grandfather's last years. It taught him early on how power in history could just rewrite reality. That fundamentally shaped his view of myth-making, I think.
And speaking of intertwined lives, his parents' story, this forbidden love between Luisa Santiago and Gabriel Garcia, scandalous stuff.
Oh, yeah. The grandparents were furious. He was poor, an outsider, illegitimate, a half-breed, and maybe worst of all for the colonel, a conservative.
Uh-huh. But there was an irony there, wasn't there?
A big one. Both Colonel Nicholas and Gabriel Gabbo's father, had, well, a collection of illegitimate children. Gabriel was known as a practiced seducer, a traveling telegraphist, also a homeopathic physician.
Sure, quite the character.
Definitely. And this whole complex family history, cousin marriages, illegitimacy, which was pretty common. Then it fed directly into the tangled family trees and 100 Years of Solitude.
Right.
It wasn't just fiction, it was his family history, just given this epic, mythical weight.
So after this incredibly vivid, protected childhood, Gabito eventually had to leave that world. And the world outside was different, a stark contrast.
Big time. His grandfather had a fall in 1935, went into decline, and the family eventually moved away to Sucre. That was really the end of the idyllic Aracataca years. His relationship with his father stayed tricky. Gabito apparently questioned his dad, calling himself doctor, preferred the honor of colonel.
And there was also a really difficult, traumatic experience around this time that he wrote about later.
Yes, deeply personal. Around age 13, his father sent him to a brothel. He was raped. He blamed his father for what he called a sordid, frightening, and humiliating experience. A painful memory that, undoubtedly colored his view of things.
Absolutely. So then he moves to Bogota in 1943, another huge shift.
Massive. It was an expensive investment for the family and a huge culture shock for him. He called it another country. Lonely, the unfamiliar smell of soot. He even remembered being told his perpetually soaked bed was just what Bogota's like, so different from the Caribbean warmth.
Right. But in this colder, tougher place, his writing really started to spark, didn't it? He was writing poetry.
Yeah, under a pseudonym influenced by poets like Rubén Darío Neruda. But the real game changer was when he read a certain book. Tell us about that Kafka moment.
The Kafka-esque revelation. It was huge for him.
Absolutely pivotal.
Yeah.
He read Kafka's The Metamorphosis in Bogota, and bam, it directly inspired his first serious story, The Third Resignation. And right away, you see themes that stick with him. Absurdity, solitude, death, and that recurring image of an unburied corpse.
Wow.
It was a huge leap from poetry to this dark existential prose. He found a new way to channel his unique way of seeing things.
So he finds this powerful early voice and then jumps into journalism, started in Cartagena for El Universal. Pretty humble beginnings, right?
Very humble. Wrote under the name New Paragraph. He'd subtly critique censorship, political violence, got paid next to nothing, 32 centavos an article apparently. But even in that struggle, he found inspiration. And that inspiration really deepened when he moved to Barranquilla, a more vibrant, modern, open city. That's where he found the Barranquilla group, and crucially, Ramon Vinés, the wise old Catalan bookseller who pops up in 100 years. Vinés became a key mentor.
And Vinny said something profound, didn't he, about Faulkner?
He did. If Faulkner lived in Barranquilla, he'd be sitting at this table.
That really hit home for Garcia Marquez.
What did that mean for him, a young writer from the Caribbean?
It was like permission, a validation. It meant his specific local experiences were actually universal. He didn't need to copy European or North American writers. He could tell his stories in his voice, a real aha moment for him finding his literary identity.
Makes sense.
And during this time, his daily column, The Giraffe, was apparently a secret tribute to his adolescent muse Mercedes because she had a long, slim neck.
Huh. Love that detail. And the actual birth of Macondo, his legendary town, that came after a specific trip back to Aracataca, right? With his mother in 1950. Yes, that was the moment. He said he realized that everything that had occurred in my childhood had a literary value, that he was only just starting to grasp. The trip was actually a failure. They couldn't sell the old family house, but it made him ditch his early novel attempt, The House, and think bigger, think about the whole town. And just like that, Macondo was born.
Incredible how these things gestate for years. And all through this, there's this thread of rebellion. He hated studying law in Bogota and Cartagena.
Hated it. Skipped classes, started impromptu football games in the hallways, apparently failed exams on purpose sometimes. He definitely preferred being called colonel over doctor, much to his dad's annoyance, I'm sure.
That resistance, it shows his drive towards writing was just innate, almost destined.
Totally. It foreshadows the commitment he'd show later. And this period also planted the seed for another major work, the real-life murder of his friend Caetano Gentili in Sucre, killed over family honor, a tragedy he turned into chronicle of a death foretold, but like 30 years later.
Amazing patience. Okay, let's follow it into the next phase. The solitude of the artist, his time abroad leading up to the masterpiece. Paris first, right, 1955 to 57. Tough times.
Extremely tough. 18 months of serious poverty. Surviving on charity, sleeping in parks sometimes.
And dangerous, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, surprisingly so. Because of the Suez Crisis and the Algerian conflict, he kept getting mistaken for an Arab. He was even beaten by police once, thrown in a cell with Algerians. A real taste of European tensions and being the other.
But he kept writing, even then.
He did. That's when he finished No One Writes to the Colonel.
Yeah.
That really poignant story about the old man waiting for his pension, his fighting cock, as this symbol of dignity and resistance.
And romantically, things were complicated.
A bit. He had a relationship with an actress, Tachia Quintana. It ended partly because she apparently felt he was too unreliable to have kids with after she had a miscarriage. Meanwhile, Mercedes was still waiting for him in Colombia.
Patient Mercedes. So after Paris, he travels to Eastern Europe in 57. What was his take on the Soviet bloc?
Initially, pretty sympathetic and favorable.
Mm-hmm.
But then he went to Budapest. He actually snuck away from his official guides to talk to ordinary Hungarians.
Bold move.
Very. And he discovered the real devastation from the 1956 uprising, the alienation and cynicism. It completely changed his perspective. Shows his journalistic instinct to find the real story, even if it was risky.
Then the Cuban Revolution happens. He's in Caracas.
Yeah, happy, undocumented, he said. And he saw the chaos and excitement on New Year's Eve, 1958, when Batista fell. He apparently speculated right then that maybe the continent's time of solitude and failure was at an end.
You can feel the hope there.
Definitely ignited his political idealism. He started working for Prensa Latina in Bogotá in 59. That was the new Cuban news agency, meant to be an alternative voice. His first real shot at journalism with no censorship and no compromises. That's also where he met Father Camilo Torres, who later became this famous guerrilla priest and his son Rodrigo's godfather.
But even that didn't last smoothly.
No. During the Bay of Pigs invasion, he managed to outsmart the CIA, using a public telex for his reports, which he was proud of. But soon after, he resigned from Prensa Latina. Said it was because of Moscow-style sectarianism creeping in. Shows his independence, again, committed to the revolution's ideals maybe, but not blindly following a party line.
Right. So this leads him to Mexico. Settles there with Mercedes, finally. His friend Alvaro Mutis helped them out.
Yes, but it was tough initially. His literary leanest era, the biography calls it. He was wrestling with. In Evil Hour, a political novel sent back in Sucre, described as a village in which there is no magic.
Yeah.
He found screenwriting less fulfilling too, though he needed the money.
But then came a breakthrough, almost accidental.
Kind of amazing, yeah. He was broke, banged out a screenplay super fast, El Charro, and incredibly, it led to a deal where he got paid for a year off to write 2 more scripts. Suddenly, he was a professional writer. That freedom was the key.
And this unlocks the big one.
The biggest one. July 1965. They're driving to Acapulco. And the whole vision for 100 Years of Solitude just hits him, fully formed. He famously said, "I did not get up for another 18 months, although the intense writing frenzy was actually just over a year."
Just incredible. Did he know right away how huge it would be?
He knew it was it. He said the book didn't really get anywhere until he wrote the scene with the galleon in the middle of the jungle. That was the moment the magic truly took hold, it seems.
Like the floodgates just opened.
Totally. And the writing itself, he said, was radically therapeutic. It let him rearrange all that he had been told or personally experienced in the way he wanted to, transforming his life into this epic art.
And Mercedes was crucial during this frenzy.
Absolutely, the unsung hero. She acted as his receptionist, secretary, and business manager, kept everything afloat while he just wrote. There's that great story about mailing the manuscript 490 pages to Buenos Aires.
Oh yeah, tell that one.
They only had enough cash to mail half of it, so they had to pawn their heater, hairdryer, and liquidizer just to send the second half. And Mercedes' line to him afterwards was perfect. "Hey, Gabo, all we need now is for the book to be no good."
What incredible faith and pressure. Okay, that brings us perfectly into the final act. The fame, the politics, the Nobel, the legacy, 100 years explodes.
Monumental success, instantly. Critics were calling him the new Cervantes. Salman Rushdie dubbed him Marquez the Magician, global phenomenon.
But fame had its downsides.
Big time. His next major novel, The Autumn of the Patriarch Complex, kind of Joycian, about power and old age, he saw it as his gradual farewell to anonymity, normality, and privacy, his first death as a public figure, he called it. It was also much darker, more brutal about love and sex than his later, more romantic stuff.
And the political side got even more complicated with the Padilla affair in 1971.
Yeah, that was messy. Plinio Mendoza signed Gabo's name, apparently by mistake, to a letter protesting Fidel Castro's treatment of the poet Heberto Padilla. It caused this huge crisis in Latin American literary politics, created a lasting rift with lots of friends, most famously Mario Vargas Llosa.
So after that, did he change his political approach?
Seems like it. He shifted more from strident political activism towards quieter diplomacy, working behind the scenes. And around this time, he went back to that old tragedy, the murder of his friend Cayetano Gentil.
And turned it into Chronicle of a Death Foretold, 1981.
A total literary tour de force. The structure is just brilliant.
It really is. The author tells you who dies in the first sentence, like a bullfighter announcing the kill. And that image of Santiago Nassar at the end?
Holding his own intestines like a bunch of roses, declaring, "They killed me, Miss Winifreda." Unforgettable.
And it was a massive hit commercially, too.
Huge. Sold 2 million copies, which was unheard of then. Gabo himself boldly called it my best work. It perfectly blended that journalistic precision with his novelist's imagination, turning personal trauma into this universal story.
Which all leads, inevitably, to the Nobel Prize in 1982. Must have been huge anticipation.
Immense buzz. His brother Eligio was apparently convinced he'd win. Gabo, though, played it cool, joked that if someone was going to win it, the Swedish ambassador would have talked to that person a month beforehand.
Classic Gabo. And his speech, The Solitude of Latin America.
Powerful stuff. Aggressive, defiant, almost incantatory, the biography says. He explicitly mixed that deconstructed magical realism with politics, called out Europeans for imposing their schemes on Latin America, claimed the prize was partly for his political activism, a real statement.
And the ceremony itself, his outfit.
Yeah, the white liquid suit, the traditional Colombian outfit with black boots, and he brought 70 Colombian musicians led by the great Totola Mopesina. It was this defiant, joyful celebration of Latin American culture on the world stage.
Amazing. But the biography mentions something surprising afterwards. A feeling of orphanhood and anguish. How do you square that with winning the Nobel?
It's a striking paradox, isn't it? Maybe the public figure achieved everything, but the private man lost the struggle, the thing that drove him. The myth became real, and maybe that's a lonely place to be. He confessed all his fantasies have been achieved, which led him to harden myself, found himself bored talking to almost anyone who was not his friend.
Wow, heavy. His later work kept exploring big themes, though.
Definitely. The General in his Labyrinth in '89, that deep dive into Simón Bolívar's final journey. Apparently, it weaves together Bolívar's, Fidel Castro's, and even Gabo's own foibles and vulnerabilities. And his politics stayed consistent, condemned the U.S. invasion of Panama, always critical of what he saw as colonialist attitudes. He even declared, "I will never go back to Spain once over some visa rules."
But he remained committed to Colombia, too.
Very much so. Invested in a TV news bulletin, built a new house in Cartagena, and crucially, set up the foundation for a new Ibero-American journalism, the FMPI. His present to Cartagena. He'd lead workshops himself, focusing on storytelling for young journalists.
And then his memoirs, Living to Tell It. That became his main focus later on.
Yes, but it was tough. The biography notes significant memory loss. He relied heavily on his son, Gonzalo, and the writer William Ospina to help piece it together.
And the opening scene of that memoir is just profound.
Incredibly symbolic. His mother, Luisa Santiago, has to literally reintroduce herself, "I'm your mother," because he doesn't recognize her. He called that the day I was really born, the day I became a writer. Full circle, like you said.
Just amazing. His last novel, Memories of My Melancholy Horse from 2004.
Yeah, explored youth and age, reflected a kind of patient wisdom he found when maybe physical reality no longer gave him any other choice.
And there's that detail about quitting smoking.
Right. His psychiatrist friend warned him smoking would cause memory loss later. Gabo quit cold turkey that same day. Pragmatic, right? Protecting the mind, the tool of his trade. For him, literature and politics were the two most effective ways of achieving immortality.
What an absolutely extraordinary life. We've gone from Aracataca's myths through the journalistic struggles right up to the Nobel stage. Garcia Marquez's life was every bit as rich, complex, and surprising as his novels.
Absolutely. The real kernel, the mystical grandmother, the massacre, the poverty, the politics, it all got woven into that incredible fictional tapestry. Genius at turning reality into lasting myth.
And it leaves us with a final thought to chew on. He famously said, I have firm political ideas, but my literary ideas change according to my digestion.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if that line between his life, his politics, his art, what if it was always more fluid, more magically real than we usually think? How much did the body, the lived experience, feed that incredible imagination?
A deep question indeed. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on his genius. Maybe it's time to pick up 100 Years of Solitude again, or Chronicle, or even Living to Tell It. Listen for those echoes of his incredible life. What will you discover?